We all want things to make sense, right? Reason promises to make the world clear. But what if the very systems we build to explain everything actually just create an illusion of control? What if they trap us inside our own theories? We're going to dive into that very idea using Amitav Ghosh's brilliant novel, The Circle of Reason.
So that's the big question we're tackling today. When does the map we've drawn to understand the world stop being a helpful guide and start becoming a prison, forcing reality into these neat little categories that just don't fit? All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with why we crave orders so much in the first place. Then we'll look at the specific map used in the novel. After that, we'll see what happens when that map completely collides with reality, explore the dangers of rigid theories, and finally, think about the two sides of reason itself. Okay, first things first, you have to get the appeal. In a world that feels completely chaotic, having a system that explains things can feel like a lifeline. It gives you a sense of mastery, and it turns all that messy ambiguity into something predictable, something you can manage. And our guide on this whole journey is Ghosh's incredible novel. It just perfectly shows this tension between messy, real-life human complexity and those neat, tidy systems that try to explain it all away. So, right at the center of this whole conflict is a young boy named Alu. He isn't just a character, though. He's basically the embodiment of complex reality itself. He's this anomaly, this puzzle that is just begging for an explanation. He's a problem that somebody needs to solve and put in a box. And the man with the box, the man with the system, is Alu's uncle, Balaram. See, Balaram has found this very seductive tool for forcing order onto the world, a framework he believes can decode all the hidden truths of a person's character and even their destiny. And in that system, it's called phrenology. The idea is that your personality, your morals, your entire future, it's all literally written on your head in a series of bumps and depths. Now, for someone like Balaram, who is absolutely desperate for certainty, this isn't just some fringe science. It's the answer to, well, everything. And just listen to how the book describes his measurement tool. It says the calipers he uses look less like an instrument for scientific inquiry and more like something designed for, well, gouging out eyes. It really shows you how this drive to classify can have this menacing, almost violent edge to it. So this is basically the grid Balaram lays over every human being. All the complexity of a personality gets boiled down to these rigid, predefined labels. It's his attempt to make people legible, to sort them into neat little boxes. But, as we're about to see, real life has a funny way of not staying in the box. And this, of course, leads to the critical moment. What happens when the person you're trying to measure and categorize just refuses to conform to your perfect little system? And right here, we see the whole system start to crack. Balaram, the guy who thinks he's an expert, is completely baffled. Alu's head isn't just unusual. It actively breaks the rules of his so-called science. The map he's been relying on? It just doesn't match the territory in front of him. And this right here, this is the absolute core of the problem. When the map fails, Balaram doesn't think, maybe my map is wrong. No, he thinks the territory is wrong. He sees Alu's complexity not as a natural, beautiful human thing, but as an error, a mistake. The theory has become more real to him than the actual person standing right there. I mean, the contrast is just, it couldn't be more obvious. On one hand, you have the neat, clean theory that promises clear, simple answers. And on the other, you have Alu's head, this messy, chaotic, beautiful reality that just refuses to be put into a box. It's the ultimate showdown between a system and a human being. And Ghosh is so clever because he shows us this isn't just about one guy's strange obsession. Balaram's wife, Toru Devi, sees her entire world through the logic of her sewing machine. When a huge crisis happens, she doesn't see the human tragedy, she sees a failure to produce blouses. For her, only the sewing machine can save us now. It's just another powerful example of how our perception gets warped by these single, rigid systems we adopt. So all of this brings us to a much bigger, much more dangerous problem. When we get totally obsessed with our theories, we can actually stop seeing people as people. They just become specimens, data points, objects to be classified and analyzed. Balaram defends his worldview with such passion. And you can almost feel the appeal, can't you? He's chasing this grand, unified theory, a way to connect a person's inner world to their outer form. It's the ultimate promise of control. If you can measure the outside, you can know the inside. What's so brilliant here is how Ghosh connects Balaram's 19th century pseudoscience to a problem we still deal with today. There's a microbiologist in the book who complains that her own very modern, very despotic science, with all its rules and rigor, prevents her from saying a simple human truth. It shows how any system, even a scientifically valid one, can become tyrannical when it forbids certain kinds of knowledge. And this is the kind of profound human truth that gets filtered out. It's a reality that you can't measure in a test tube or map with a pair of calipers. It's that messy, moral dimension of life that these rigid systems, they just don't have a language for. So where does all this leave us? Is reason the enemy? Well, no, not exactly. The novel suggests the whole issue is a bit more complicated than that. Reason is a tool, but it's a tool with a really dangerous double edge. And this is where we get this beautiful central metaphor of weaving. Weaving is like reason. It's the process we use to create order and patterns and beauty. It's what makes us human. But that very same process, when you take it to an extreme, can create these rigid patterns that trap us inside the very logic we created to begin with. So the big takeaway here isn't that we should just throw our maps away. Not at all. It's that we have to remember that they are just maps. They're useful, they're even essential tools for getting around in the world, but they are not the world itself. And the real danger is when we start to forget that difference. And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question to ask ourselves. Whether it's in science or politics or even just our own personal beliefs. Which of our maps have we started to mistake for the actual world? Which systems do we lean on so heavily that we've started to confuse our neat interpretation of reality with reality itself? Hey, if you found this analysis valuable, it would be amazing if you could like and subscribe. You can also support the time and research behind these explainers on Patreon. And if you want to go even deeper on this topic, check out the full audio analysis linked in the description. Because that's what we're all about here at Crisis in Perception, taking a hard look at the systems that shape what we believe, all in the hope that by understanding our tools a little better, we can all learn to see the world and each other a little more clearly. Thanks so much for watching.